What is going on, everyone? Welcome back into another episode of the Fan Committee Football Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Joe Tuman, as always, joined by my co-host, Michael Herrera. Michael, we're back for the 2023 NFL season. We're going to be previewing some of these divisions. And we're starting with your team's division, your squad, the Miami Dolphins, and the AFC East. How excited are you for this season coming up, Mike?
Oh, I'm pumped. I think this season is like very important for like the trajectory of this franchise. I think as long as we can get a playoff win, we're moving the team in the right direction. I know a lot of people are saying like this year Super Bowl or bust. I don't think so. I think the team could get there, but I don't think it's for certain. But I'm really excited. I think the Jalen Ramsey trade is huge. I think Tua is really going to break out this year. I think it's really going to be his time to shine. And Mike McDaniel, it's the second year with the system. Tua is going to be more comfortable. I'm really excited about what's happening with the Dolphins right now.
Yeah, the Dolphins had a very busy offseason. We'll definitely get into it, but this division is still one of the more packed ones in the league. Obviously, you got the Bills leading the charge. They've been the champs of the division for a while. You got Belichick and the Patriots still kicking. They're always going to at least give a fight. And then, of course, the Jets as well, busy offseason, bringing in my guy Aaron Rodgers, no longer a Green Bay Packer. It's going to be a very weird season in Lambeau Field. But today we're going to be talking about Aaron's fit with the Jets. So I guess we can start with the Bills a little bit here. So my thing with the Bills, it reminds me last year about the Chiefs and how everyone was talking about the AFC West can be all competitive. The Chiefs lost Tyreek Hill. Maybe the Chargers or the Broncos or the Raiders could be better than the Chiefs this year. But then, I don't know, the Chiefs they won the Super Bowl. The Bills, I think the Chiefs at least lost a big star in Tyreek Hill. Who'd the Bills lose that says like they're going to take such a step back? Now, I'm not saying the Dolphins or Jets can't win the division, but I think the Bills, I don't really think they're going to take a huge step back in terms of being contenders. What's your thoughts on where Buffalo's standing as we head into this year?
I personally think the Bills are still going to win the division this year. The only really notable player they lost was Edmonds, and I really like Trayvon Edmonds. I think he was a great linebacker for them, but I don't think it's going to break the entire defense to lose him. And I think people just want to write them off very quickly because they've been good for too long. It's kind of the same thing with the Chiefs. Like the Chiefs are kind of starting to become a dynasty, and people don't like that. People don't like how good they've become. So I think people just want the Bills to be bad because they've been so good for like the past like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and it kind of runs in with Josh Allen too. Everyone's saying Josh Allen's the most overrated quarterback. No, he's not. He's probably, I think he's a top 3 quarterback. I think Burrow passed him last year just because he was more consistent, but I still view Josh Allen as a top end talent. I still think he's going to get this receiving core to perform at a very high level. Bringing back same offensive coordinator with Ken Dorsey, Sean McDermott, same coach. And really, they did lose Devin Singletary, who's been there for a while, but we can touch on it. I think their running back room is going to be a lot better this year.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think people are really trying to undersell Damian Harris. I know he kind of got replaced with Ramondre Stevenson back in New England, and the injuries kind of slowed him down, which let Stevenson kind of just take over his role. But I still think he's a good power back, especially now that he's going to be in a backup role that's going to conserve him a bit more. And I think people are forgetting that James Cook was like a really good running back in college, and we haven't seen too much of him in the league because unfortunately the Bills last year did not really commit to their running backs. And when they did commit, it was very odd usage. They would put one guy in for one play, another guy for the next play. It was very odd. So I think that hopefully Dorsey, he's going to get some, just kind of like go more with the flow of like the running back, just feed the hot hand. And I think the problem is they try to get too cute with it.
Yeah. And I think James Cook is going to have, I'm not saying he's going to be a superstar running back, but I think he's going to have a big breakout this year. And unfortunately, a guy I like to watch a lot, Nyheim Hines, he's out for the season now. We found out recently. And he was their big return specialist last year. They picked him up at the trade deadline. But with him out of the lineup, not only are they losing their third down back option in Hines, but also a really good kick returner. And I think James Cook was already going to be the starter, but now he kind of inherits the kick returner role. He's going to inherit more targets out of the backfield. I wouldn't be shocked if, besides Diggs, if he winds up with the most receptions on this team.
Yeah, no, that's not a crazy concept. It's really unfortunate about Nyheim Hines because that's not even something that was his fault. Like someone hit him, and it's like it's a very messy situation. So hopefully he gets.
Wasn't
better.
It someone else's jet ski like ran?
Yeah, he was. I believe he was sitting still when someone like crashed into him.
Jesus,
which like for
Very.
all we know, that could have, disastrous like long-term effects, because you never know with like stuff like that about like, knee injuries, because they're so like very very just like contentious.
Right.
But I agree. I think James Cook is definitely in line for an extremely heavy like usage role. And I think hopefully he should be able to handle it. I think he's a good running back. I think from some of the flashes we saw from him last year, he could be very good. So I don't blame them for having confidence in him.
And I like what you said about Damian Harris as well. I, I think the thing about the Patriots, and we're going to get into it in a bit with them as well, their offense was atrocious last year because they didn't have a coaching staff. 2 years ago, Damian Harris was one of the most efficient red zone backs in the league.
Yep.
Now he's going to have the Bills offense setting him up for these just really good targets. I mean, if you play in fantasy football, Damian Harris would be a good, hand to have. I think he's going to get back to being like an 8-10 touchdown guy. And then they even signed Latavius Murray, who out of nowhere had one of the best seasons of his career last year on a dwindling Broncos team. He came halfway through the season, he came aboard, had a nice year. So I think as a third running back, even they're pretty set. I mean, that's a consummate pro. So yeah, I think this Bills backfield, it's been kind of their weak point for a while. I think their offense is going to be more well balanced this year.
I remember during draft time, a lot of people were upset that they drafted Kincaid, the tight end,
Yeah.
instead of like going for like a running back or something. But I don't think that's like super necessary, especially when you have Josh Allen, who I don't agree with the whole sense that he's overrated. I just think people need to be a bit more just like, yeah, sometimes he like lapses into like just like really bad judgment, but I don't think that overall makes him a bad quarterback. It's just that sometimes you'll make him see a questionable throw.
Yeah.
But I think with Josh Allen, especially as a running threat, like this offense, now that there's actually going to be, hopefully, we think they're going to use their running backs more. People are going to be wary of more parts of the Bills offense, which helps them, because a lot of people talk about the fact that like Gabe Davis hasn't like really broken out, but Gabe Davis is the number 2. He's doing what he needs to do. He like Stephon Diggs is the number 1 for a reason, not Gabe Davis.
Yeah. No, I agree. And Stephon Diggs, it's just how the Bills kind of structure it. It's not this isn't the Commanders when they have 3 different receivers they're looking at. Stephon Diggs is getting the ball as long as he's open, or not. Even if he's not open, he's still going to get thrown to because he's that good.
Yeah.
As long as Gabe Davis is stretching the field, making a few big plays. I mean, we saw the one game last year. What do you have, like 200 yards almost on like 3 catches or something? So he has days like that. Some days he's not going to do much. It is what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe Khalil Shakir breaks out, but I don't think he's anyone you need to count on. I don't
Mhm.
think the Bills need to count on him because between, like we said, Cook, obviously Diggs, elite receiver, and then you mentioned Kincaid, their first round pick, tight end. And then Dawson Knox, I still think is going to play a lot too. I think they're going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets because everything I've read is like, this is not a demotion for Dawson Knox. The Bills are still very confident in him, his ability as both a pass catcher, a red zone threat, and as a blocker. So I don't think the wide receiver depth behind Diggs is that big a deal.
I agree. I think people are just trying to overblow it. It's like we're talking about. People just want to look for like cracks in the armor, when in reality, this is kind of just how the Bills, as you mentioned, their offense is just kind of structured this way. And especially like Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid, like you were mentioning, last year they tried to do 2 tight end sets with like OJ Howard, but OJ Howard, unfortunately, he wasn't really, lack of a better term, wasn't good enough to be like utilizing the 2 tight end sets like they wanted to. And so they're hoping Kincaid can do that for them. And I think that's going to be huge. Just have 2 huge tight ends out there running routes along with Stephon Diggs and James Cook and also Josh Allen's running ability. I think this offense is going to be pretty great. I don't think it's going to like lose any steam from last year compared to.
Yeah, and I agree. And O-line, it's a little different. They brought Connor McGovern in, but overall, similar lineup, and they're pretty sturdy. They've been pretty sturdy, and hopefully with more pressure on the run game, hopefully they'll continue to block well, even with a potential for more on the ground attempts.
Yeah, for sure. I think, as you're saying, like their line was pretty solid last year. They got Deion Dawkins at left tackle. He's very good player. So I don't think I don't know. I think their offense is still going to be fine. I think their defense is what people should be a little more concerned about.
Yeah.
But even then, I think like there's definitely like a world where Bills defense stays at least the same level of quality that it were last season.
Yeah. We could talk about the defense because that's the if you're going to make a case, Bills aren't going to win this division. This is where you start. You look at the Dolphins' explosive offense. We'll get to them. We look at the Jets getting Aaron Rodgers, Breece Hall coming back. this Bills defense, it has maybe more questions than you would want from a contender, right? Like Leslie Frazier, no longer there. They don't have a defensive coordinator right now. Now, they must be confident. Sean McDermott's a defensive coach. He must be confident in himself and the rest of the guys on this staff to kind of bring it together as a collective effort. But then, I mean, I don't even know where to start. I mean, you start with Von Miller coming off the ACL tear, second of his career, I believe. He's getting up there in age, and he was very good for them last year after signing a big deal. What do you think? What do you expect from him as he's kind of nearing maybe, well, I would say he's nearing the end of his career, but he signed a 5-year deal last offseason. So I'm kind of curious where he goes from here.
Yeah, I don't know. The Von Miller thing is interesting. I think as long as like the injury's not hampering him, I still think he's gonna be like the same level of quality he was last year. I think Von Miller, he was just so like he's such like a technically sound player at what he does. I don't think his age is like really a big issue. It's more about just can he stay healthy, which is more that's the bigger issue with like regarding his age is him staying healthy. But I think that he should be just fine as long as like his knee isn't bothering him or anything like that. I would just be concerned about what happens if he gets injured again, because they've had a lot of like high draft picks recently that haven't really done anything. You know, AJ Epinesa and Boogie Basham, those were guys they drafted. I believe both of them second rounders a few years ago, and neither of them has really done anything. And so it's more about what happens if Von Miller goes down, but we don't really know for certain. So as it stands, with him as the starter, and then also they brought in Leonard Floyd, which I don't think enough people talk about because he's pretty good, is like, I still think they're going to be good. I think the only problem is what happens if one of them gets injured.
Yeah, I think Leonard Floyd has proven that, he had 9 sacks again last year. I think as a secondary edge rusher, when he's playing off someone else, as long as he's not getting doubled, he's going to produce. And I think as long as Von Miller's healthy, Leonard Floyd's going to be an impact guy on this defense. I see no reason that can't happen. I think Greg Rousseau as well, I think, has shown that he has a lot of potential, and they're probably going to look at him for a big third year. So I think the front seven, you mentioned Milano earlier, like I think they're going to be pretty solid, especially if Von Miller stays on the field. But, just a concern there with Von Miller. But the secondary, this is where I'm a little concerned. I think talent-wise, even more so than Von Miller situation, like just collectively, the talent, if they all stay healthy, I think they'll be fine. But there's a lot of questions here. And, Tre'Davious White, 2 years ago, tore the ACL, took a little bit of time to come back last year. Now it's the year after the injury, right? Or 2 years after the injury. So in most cases, or at least some cases, this is the year he gets back to be an elite corner. But what if he doesn't, or what if he has another injury? Mm-hmm. That's when the secondary is going to start to unravel. Kyrie Elam, their first round pick last year, also had a couple injuries as a rookie. Can he take that next step? And then what do you think about their safety room? So Micah Hyde's coming off a neck injury. He's only played 2 games last year. I remember when we talked about the Bills this time last year, we said they had maybe the best safety duo in the league, but Hyde and Poyer both dealt with injuries last year. They're both in their 30s. And then, obviously the big story everyone's going to be talking about, Damar Hamlin's going to be playing football this year, which is obviously an incredible story. Mm-hmm. But the guy almost died. So what are we going to expect from him? He was a guy he filled in very nicely for Micah Hyde. 90 tackles last year, kind of a breakout season for him at the strong safety, or at free safety rather. But what do we expect from him? I don't think anyone's going to hold it against him if he can't perform to a top-notch level. So a lot of questions. What do you think about that?
Looking at it just like from like a objective viewpoint, that on paper they should be really good because they have a lot of talented players, but as you're saying, the depth behind them is kind of like suspect. If Tre'Davious White doesn't come back from his injury enough, or gets injured again, or Kyrie Elam doesn't take that next step because he's very up and down, like their corner room could be a big mess. And it's the same thing with the safeties as you were mentioning. I think their biggest issue is not necessarily who they have, because Damar Hamlin and Taylor Rapp, I think, are excellent backups for Poyer and Hyde. I think the problem is that, one, Damar Hamlin, as you were saying, he's coming back from a serious heart condition. Like, there's who knows if he's going to be able to really like fully go up to speed. And I don't think they really have anyone behind them in case of injuries happens. And I think that's kind of like a big issue with them as well.
It's just one of those things where when Jalen Waddle's going over the middle, like, are they going to be healthy enough, or are they going to be well equipped enough to stop that? And I guess it's a TBD. We have to see if these guys can bounce back. We have to see if these guys age wise, they're not held back. But I would say if you're a Bills fan, that's the one thing you got to be concerned about. And then that extends to the playoffs with, Burrow and Mahomes as well. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. Playing in the AFC, if your secondary is your weak point, you're probably not going to make the Super Bowl. But like we said, if everybody gets back on track, then they're going to have a really good secondary like they did a few years ago. So it's a wait and see, but it's definitely a red flag to note.
It's kind of interesting because I feel like this whole like things have to play out extremely well kind of applies to like the entire AFC East. Like
Mhm.
it's kind of the same thing with like Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey. We
Yeah.
have to hope that Howard comes back from injury well and that Ramsey, continues to play at a high level. Same thing with the Jets. Aaron Rodgers is unfortunately getting older. Who knows what might happen with him and injuries and stuff like that. It's kind of the theme for like the whole AFC East.
Yeah.
They're all counting on a lot of things to go right.
I completely agree. And let's get into the Dolphins now. I know you're dying to. So you mentioned that secondary. Ramsey had a down year last year. I think a big part of that was because the Rams just were bad as collectively. So
Yeah.
I don't buy that Jalen Ramsey's just cooked now. Like after he was the best corner in the league 14 months ago, or even less than that. I think he's going to have, maybe he's not the best corner in the league, but I think he's going to be a very good number one corner again, especially with Xavier Howard, as long as he can stay healthy. Maybe Xavier Howard isn't as good as he once was, but even just the presence of him on the other side is going to help Jalen Ramsey a lot. When you look at this Dolphins defense, you brought in Vic Fangio as defensive coordinator. That's a huge hire, as you know.
Yeah.
What is your expectation? Because I think it'd be fair to have high expectations.
Oh, I'm expecting a top 10 defense. You bring in Vic Fangio, who is like widely regarded as one of the best defensive coaches in the league right now. And all of these great players like Bradley Chubb, Jalen Ramsey, like you need to do well, especially with some of the good, like a lot of the good players you already have, like Christian Wilkins. Xavier Howard, unfortunately, he had multiple groin injuries last year, wasn't really up to speed. But I expect big things out of the defense, and I think they can get it done. It's just that we need injuries to go our way as well a little bit.
Yeah, looking at your secondary, it gets me excited. Javon Holland, another guy you didn't mention, another great player. And then you took Cam Smith with your first draft pick. We talked a little bit about this when we talked about the drafts, but with him coming in there as another corner, and then Nick Needham's still there, just there's a potential this Dolphins secondary is one of the very best shutdown secondaries in the league. But like we said, just like the Bills, I mean, it's about staying healthy, I guess.
No, absolutely. That's like the thing with I was actually reading an article about it today. Xavier Howard, he was like very blunt about it. He was like, yeah, I just had a few injuries, but I had to play through them because our depth was just worn thin. And hopefully after he got surgery this offseason, hopefully he can just get back to even close to the level he was at. I just think the reason people like, especially him and Ramsey, people want to write them off quickly because they're so enamored with Sauce Gardner because he's the new hot young corner who's like really good. Like he's rising up. Like
Jalen Ramsey, yeah.
he was what Jalen Ramsey was exactly. And people just want to be like, Ramsey's had a down year. But, as a lot of people also pointed out, Ramsey's down year was other guys' best year of their career.
Right.
So I think just like you were saying, the Rams kind of just sucked as a whole. So I think it's kind of unfair for you to be like, Ramsey's fallen off. And
Yeah.
I think Sauce Gardner, he is great, but it was his first year. You got like, don't heap all these expectations on this poor kid and then suddenly he's going to let you down next season. And, like that's not fair to him because I think he's great. I think he's a great guy. DJ Reed, also excellent second corner next to him. But
This
Javon,
division has a ton of great,
oh, yeah.
great secondary players. Even the
Oh, yeah.
Patriots are still kicking.
Yeah. I mean, they have Kyle Duggar. Kyle Duggar is pretty good.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest breakout I'm expecting this year is Javon Holland. I fully expect him to leap into that top 5 safety conversation this year. I think he has shown all the flashes of it and he has the tools. And I think Fangio can really bring that out of him.
Yeah, I mean, Fangio, we saw what he did with guys like Justin Simmons, Kareem Jackson in the past. He has Eddie Jackson in Chicago. So I think it's very possible. And I think I would be surprised if he's not a Pro Bowl caliber. Well, I don't care about the Pro Bowl. Let's say all pro caliber player. Pro Bowls doesn't matter. But you get what I'm saying. An elite safety start to get that recognition that you want him to. What do you think about this front seven? Now, you made some interesting moves. I mean, last year, the trade for Bradley Chubb was huge. I think it's just unfortunate that the Dolphins were in contention mode last year. They gave up that pick to get Bradley Chubb, and that's when Tua kind of got hurt once again, and kind of the last month of your season kind of didn't go where you wanted to. This is going to be the year I think Bradley Chubb's addition alongside Jalen Phillips on the edge really starts to, really starts to make an impact.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree. I think Bradley Chubb, he himself was also saying, he's like, yeah, like being here with Fangio again, like he was a big influence on me when I was in Denver. And like that's going to be huge for them as well. So I think that's like really exciting, especially with Jalen Phillips on the other side. Jalen Phillips is also an excellent player. Really excited about what he's bringing to the table this year. I think he's just kept improving year after year. I feel really good about David Long and Jerome Baker. I think those are two guys who are a little underrated. Jerome Baker, he comes in, gets the job done. He's really good at run stuffing. And David Long, apparently, he's very underrated according to his stats. So I'm really excited about what like they can bring. And I think the front seven's a lot better than some people might think.
Yeah, even Christian Wilkins, you mentioned earlier. Didn't Christian Wilkins have like 95 tackles as a defensive end last year or
Yeah.
something crazy?
I believe he like set a record for like
Yeah,
defensive tackles or something like that.
yeah, that's crazy. So Ogba's still there. Yeah, I look top to bottom. I guess the concern would be Howard and Ramsey, but I'm more confident in them than the Bills guys overall. And I think this defense will be. I mean, you said top 10. I think you're being modest. I think you know that. I'm looking at top 5 for this team. I think I see Miami. Well, we can get into offense now. I see them as a surefire playoff team. I don't. You almost were that last year before the Tua situation kind of went off the rails. And I guess we can start with him there on the offense. Just what's your confidence level like with Tua right now? Because if this team's going to be a playoff team, he's going to have to, well, not only perform but also stay on the field.
I'm very confident in his playing abilities. I know a lot of people like to say, oh, he's no Joe Burrow, he's no Justin Herbert. And that's fine. They're all drafted near each other. They're always going to get those comparisons. But I think Tua can play well enough to what we need him to play. I think, unfortunately, the problem is the concussions because, as a lot of people know, once you get one, you're more susceptible to getting them continuously after that. But I'm not really worried about like his level of play. I think the problem is more what happens if he's not playing. And I think that's kind of the concern, which is why they kind of brought in Mike White, who, if anything goes wrong, can hopefully just keep the ship afloat enough to get back to land.
Prime time, Mike White.
But apparently it's kind of interesting because the reports coming out of camp are that Skylar Thompson's giving him a good run for his money. They really like, just like the arm.
Many loves Skylar Thompson.
I mean, I get it. Like considering we almost beat the Bills with Skylar Thompson at quarterback, like we lost by a field goal, and that's not to like speak ill of the Bills. I think they still played a great game, but I think it shows just how good our offense can be, and I think that hopefully, with Tua playing the whole year, our offense is even gonna even be even better, and I think offense and defense should both be top 10. And as you're saying, they should be top 5, but you like to be cautiously optimistic. So I'm going to say top 10 for both of them.
Okay, Tua last year when he was on the field, best quarterback rating in the league, at least for starting quarterbacks. And it just, I mean, obviously we have Waddle and Hill. It's going to be easy for a quarterback, but not just that. They just made it. They made everything run so seamlessly. It just felt like, at least those first 2 months of the season when things were going well. I just feel like the way for this offense to stay efficient is, I mean, Hill and Waddle help each other get open. Obviously, you can't double either of them because the other guy will be so wide open. But I do think they just have a well balanced look. Even the running back room, everybody does different things. We talked about Devin Achane before when we did the draft podcast. But to reiterate, like, what are you thinking from this run game, this offensive line? Like, I still don't think it's going to be heavily used because of how good your pass game is. But what are you expecting from that group?
I expect them to, because it was more towards the end of the season, they started using the running backs a bit more and you saw more of what they were capable of. But unfortunately, we didn't really stick to it. And even McDaniels himself has said that. He's like, yeah, I didn't stick to the run game enough. That's why we brought back everyone from last year, because it wasn't that they were playing badly. It's that we weren't committing enough to using them. But the one thing that has me a little concerned is that we didn't invest more into the offensive line. They're really just banking on a lot of the guys we've drafted or are developing to really like continue going, because they're hoping that by bringing in good coaches, it's going to help kind of fix those issues. And although I do appreciate the optimism, I'm a little concerned that we didn't bring in someone else at least a little more established, especially with Teron Armstead oftentimes being injured. So I think that's something that's like my biggest concern about this team, to be honest, is the offensive line not developing the way everyone's hoping.
I agree. I know like it's not that Liam Eichenberg and Robert Hunt are like bad players, but they're not. I don't view them as solidifying that offensive line. It still feels bottom half of the league to me. You did sign Connor Williams, but I don't know. It just doesn't. You're banking on Austin Jackson getting better, and you're banking on Teron Armstead staying healthy as he continues to age. But I guess that's why it's a good thing that you obviously got to protect Tua, but at the same time, O-line is kind of more important for the run game, at least in most cases, I feel like. So I don't know. I think pass heavy is the move for the Dolphins though.
Yeah, no, it definitely is, but hopefully they develop, because I think that's like the big thing was that the offensive line was not creating holes for the running backs, and because people knew our running backs weren't really getting touches, they were more able to focus in on, Tyreek and Jalen Waddle and stuff like that. But I think something that's really going to help is, I think like an underrated signing was like Robbie Anderson. Apparently
Okay.
he's been playing really well in camp,
Really,
and a third guy to stretch the field doesn't hurt.
I really liked Robbie Anderson like 2 years ago. I don't know what happened, but okay, if he can somehow turn it around, that would be great.
I feel like the combination of having bad quarterbacks, like it just creates kind of like a bad attitude, and that's kind of seemed what happened last year, was that he got kind of like snippy with the team and it became a whole thing. But
Yeah.
I think, and I'm not saying he's like a huge deal, but I think he's going to help stretch the field more, and I think that should be helpful in the sense that like if people are keying in on the pass game, having a third speedster should hopefully help open things up maybe with the offense.
Well, they paid a bunch of money for Cedric Wilson. I mean, not a bunch, but
Yeah.
they gave him a long-term contract. It'd be nice to see him, now that Trent Sherfield's gone.
Yeah.
He's who I would bank on for receiver 3. Honestly, actually, I like all these guys. Braxton Berrios as well. That was an all
Mhm.
first team all pro return guy a couple of years ago. So I think you got a good balance of like if Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle unfortunately get injured, I don't think you're in a terrible spot, at least from a versatility standpoint. I want to
No,
correct you though. It's not Robbie Anderson. It's Robbie Chosen.
you're right. You're right.
This is like Darius Leonard turning into Shaq Leonard, but like 10 times goofier.
Yeah, because that was like a chosen thing. That wasn't like, oh yeah, my name's actually Shaq, by the way, just so everyone knows.
Right, right.
But no,
So
I'm very optimistic about the team. I think it really just comes down to, can the O line play well enough? I don't even want them to play great, just good enough to get the job done.
right.
And can the guys we need to stay healthy stay healthy?
And you're gonna need that O line against teams like the Bills and also the Jets because their defense is really good. But let's start with the offense for them. I know you said before we started recording, you're kind of hesitant to jump on the Jets hype train. What's your thought process with the Jets right now? Because I'm not gonna lie, I'm very optimistic about
I like the Jets because for a long time the Dolphins and the Jets have been the laughing stock of the AFC East. We've been the bottom two teams typically. And it's not because I'm trying to like hate on them because like they're playing against the Dolphins, my team, but I just think people need to pump the brakes a little bit on a team that didn't even make the playoffs this year and saying they're certainly going to win the division. And I think you have to, be more measured with what you're aiming for, because you're counting on like some important positions for like guys to come back like extremely healthy. Like Aaron Rodgers, I think Aaron Rodgers like wasn't that terrible last year, but I think you have to hope that that's not a decline and was just a down year, because if he keeps declining, then like I don't think that's going to help anything. And on top of the fact that he's getting older, if you have to turn to Zach Wilson because of an injury, you might as well just clock in for the season. Like that's it.
it.
I think if Zach Wilson has to play like more than like 3 games, I don't think the Jets season goes the way they want it to. And I think Brees Hall, I think, is an incredible running back. I think he's one of the best right now. When he was healthy, he was amazing. But how is he going to come back from that ACL injury? And
Yeah.
can Michael Carter fill in well enough? Because as we saw, Michael
No,
Carter,
we found
yeah,
out.
when
No.
when Brees Hall got injured, Michael Carter got cast aside for like the 7th round undrafted guys, and that's fine because they were still good. But
Mhm.
I just think that they're counting on some guys that we have to wait and see what happens. But I'm not like rooting against them. I just think people need to wait and see like kind of what's happening with like the team structure before saying they're going to win the division, because the Bills are still there. The Bills are still a great team.
Yeah. So obviously, I'm gonna have a lot of thoughts on the Jets having Aaron Rodgers and every other former Packer under the sun. I don't know how they haven't signed Mercedes Lewis yet, but it's gonna happen. Well, maybe we'll see. So here's my thing. I think there's a lot of question marks. Like you said with Brees Hall. I mean, Brees Hall won them like 4 games last year on his own while they had Zach Wilson, Mike White at quarterback, and then he got hurt. Sucked. Um, I will say I actually forgot about this. They did draft Israel. I think it's Israel
Abanikanda.
Abonaconda from
Yes.
Pitt. I know the Pitt fans love him. So I don't know, maybe if Brees Hall, is still struggling with injuries at the beginning of the year, maybe he can take some of those between the tackle carries, let Michael Carter be more of a third down back, but we'll have to see with that. I think as long as Brees Hall is healthy, it's the perfect kind of, in case Aaron Rodgers wants to take it easy a little bit during the season, I think that's the perfect balance of the offense. But if Brees Hall is not able to be that type of all-pro runner, that's where it gets a little dicey. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to have a big year. He had the worst year of his career in terms of a full season last year, I would say. Even worse than his first year in 2008, in my opinion. His October was dreadful, but a lot of people have said he was dealing with a finger injury for a lot of the season. Obviously, you lose Devontae Adams. I thought he would be a little bit better despite that, but maybe the injury plus losing Devontae Adams is what led to his up and down season. The Packers still were over 500. Yes, they completely choked against the Lions. That was a terrible loss. So bad. Anyways, that was a terrible way to end the Aaron Rodgers era. It couldn't have at least been a playoff loss. That's kind of upsetting. But with that aside, I think Aaron Rodgers, you can just tell both professionally, he didn't grow a giant mustache in the offseason this year. He's clean cut. He looks refreshed. He looks rejuvenated. He sounds like he's having a fun time with this Jets team. I'm buying it. I really do think that he's going to have a big year. Not an MVP year, but I think he's going to play well enough that this team is going to be a playoff team. I really am that confident. I'm confident in Garrett Wilson to be a number one receiver. I think he already proved that last year. And I'm excited for him. And then the rest of this offense is just the Packers offense. And it's Nathaniel Hackett as the offensive coordinator. It's Alan Lazard in the Alan Lazard role. It's Randall Cobb in the Randall Cobb role. It's McCole Hardman in the MVS role. I think he might be even a little bit better than MVS because I think his hands might be a little more consistent. So, and I also will say, Tyler Conklin is the best tight end Aaron Rodgers has played with in 9 years since Jermichael Finley had to retire with his injury. That Tyler Conklin is better than any tight end the Packers have had since then. So I think Aaron Rodgers is going to have a grand old time in this offense. But what do you think about Corey Davis as well, if they can get anything from him? So what do you think about this unit? I think it's going to be better than people think, especially if Brees Hall is healthy.
I really like their weapons. I mean, me personally, outside of Wilson and Lazard, the rest of their weapons don't super move me. No disrespect to Hardman Jr., but after being a second-round draft pick, he didn't really break out in KC. Like, after Tyreek Hill left, that was his chance to, earn a huge contract at KC. I agree with Tyler Conklin. I think he's great. My biggest issue, honestly, with their offense is I think their offensive line is dreadful. Yeah. I think it's in just as worse, it's in bad shape like ours, if not worse, possibly.
My thing with that is just, I agree. It's not looking good, but the potential is there. I don't think the Dolphins to me are just a lot of average offensive linemen who get the job done kind of, but aren't all these guys. Dwayne Brown's old, and I don't know why he's still the left tackle, but I still think he's a solid hand. He knows what he's doing. He's been around forever. Laken Tomlinson, they paid big money for last offseason. He had a bit of a disappointing season in his first year, but I don't know. Maybe he bounces back. Elijah Vera Tucker, their first round pick. Honestly, I think he's been good, but maybe I haven't followed it closely enough. What's your take on it?
I would say, from my understanding, Vera Tucker was good. But it kind of seems like he's the only guy a lot of people feel confident in. People are worried that Dwayne Brown's too old. Laken Tomlinson had a really bad year last year. Mekhi Becton, who knows if he's going to play because he could get injured again and miss a whole season. Who knows if he's
a lot of weight. People have been talking about how much weight he lost, but
similar to what happened with Austin Jackson. A lot of people were talking about this offseason that he came in slimmed down. So here's hoping Austin Jackson and Mekhi Becton can both, after they slim down, get it together. But Mekhi Becton's got the injury history. and Connor McGovern was just very like average at best. So I think their O-line's kind of their biggest issue, but I
Agreed.
don't I agree. There's a world where like they can get the job done. It's not the worst thing in the world for them, but I don't love it either. So
Yeah, I agree. I think that's what's going to hold them back the most offensively. I just trust the infrastructure though. And I know Nathaniel
Mhm.
Hackett completely embarrassed himself last season, but he was a good offensive coordinator with the Packers and he got Blake Bortles to throw 32 touchdowns in a season. So
Mhm.
something there. I don't know what happened in Denver. And who knows? Maybe we're going to find out Russell Wilson was more of a problem than we thought. I'm
Mhm.
optimistic and hopeful that's not the case and that it was Hackett's fault, but Aaron Rodgers loves Nathaniel Hackett, and Aaron
Mhm.
Rodgers had some really good seasons under Matt LaFleur and Nathaniel Hackett. So we'll have to see how that situation shakes out.
Yeah.
Defensively, I think the Jets, they're not on the Dolphins level, but I really like this defense. This front seven, Quinn Williams, he just got the biggest contract for any defensive lineman in NFL
Mhm.
history. They got Carl Lawson coming back, and their two most recent first round picks, Jermaine Johnson the second last year in 2022, and then this past year they drafted Will McDonald the fourth. So those guys kind of backups right now, but we'll see if they can kind of play their way into bigger roles. So I think that D line's pretty good. And then CJ Mosley, big
Mhm.
bounce back year last year after some disappointing ones after coming over from Baltimore.
Yeah.
And he kind of was the captain of that defense last year. So front seven wise, I think they're pretty set.
I like for the most part most of their front seven, but there's definitely a few guys in there that I'm not super moved by, like Quentin Jefferson and Franklin Myers, and then like Jermaine Sherwood. Like those are some guys that are like some
I'll
starters.
be honest, I don't know who that is. I don't know who Sherwood is.
That's my thing. Like Franklin Myers and Quentin Jefferson, like they've been serviceable in the past, but like they continue getting older. I don't know if they should really be starters anymore, and they don't like really move me. And neither does like some of their depth. The main guy behind CJ Mosley is Chaz Surratt. I just know he's from UNC because I live in the North Carolina area. I don't know
Fair.
anything else about him.
Yeah, I think the Jets, they're just gonna have to hope people stay healthy, and if they stay healthy, they're gonna be good like they were last year. They
The
had a great
potential's there though. The potential's there. I don't want to like
for sure.
crap all over it, but I think that there's some questionable decisions that maybe, throughout camp they'll be changed out for someone else who's got more potential. So like I can see why people are very optimistic about this defense. I totally get it.
Yeah, and we mentioned Sauce earlier. I mean, this guy, as long as he continues to do what he did last year, he's gonna be a total lockdown. It's gonna be a ton of fun once again to see him compete with Diggs and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Him and Garrett Wilson going at each other in practice is gonna make both of them so much better. Draft classmates last year, obviously. So yeah, I think Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed, like you said, that's still a very reliable tandem. Jordan Whitehead's solid. And then here's the thing, another Packer, which I think this is the only signing that wasn't linked to Aaron Rodgers, is Adrian Amos coming over to New York as well.
Yeah.
I'll say Adrian Amos had a really bad year against the pass last year, but when your partners in that secondary are Eric Stokes, who was really bad and then got injured, Darnell Savage, who's been pretty bad for a while, and Russell Douglas is fine, and obviously Jair's good, but I don't know. I feel like the Packers defense was kind of broken last year. I don't know why we didn't fire Joe Barry. I just view Adrian Amos. He was a team leader for Green Bay for 4 years. I view him as a professional. It's not just because he went to Penn State. I mean, it's because he was on the Packers, if we're being honest. I just really like the guy.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to fit right in with this team. And I think, Sauce Gardner is a younger player. He's going to lead on the field. But I think Adrian Amos, everything I've ever heard and seen from him is that he's a leader off the field. And I think he's going to be an underrated ad for this defense. So I think the Jets, as long as Aaron Rodgers has, let's say he's 80% of what he was 2 years ago, and as long as this defense is what they're supposed to be, I think this is a playoff team.
Oh,
What
for
would
sure.
what would you say? What's your reservations about this team? Super Bowl wise or playoff wise? Like what do you
I think it's more Super Bowl wise
okay,
because I
that's
like me
fair.
personally, I've seen a lot of people saying that like the Jets have by far the best defense in the league. And that's a little too far. Like my reservations with the defense is kind of like some of their backups, and like who they're relying on, like if something happens, like a short-term injury and stuff like that. But I do see definitely like the potential because like DJ Reed, Sauce Gardner are incredible. Jordan Whitehead's very good. He stands out a lot to me as a guy in like the top end like of their secondary. Like he's really running the show back there. So I think he's pretty great. I think their defense has the potential to be the best, but I think people need to pump the brakes a little and just shoot for, playoffs first before we start talking about Super Bowls and stuff like that.
I think the Jets with Sauce, with Quinn Williams, and with CJ Mosley have three guys who are right at the top of their position groups. But
Mm-hmm.
collectively, it's good. They just need a
Mm-hmm.
lot. They need some guys to get better. Maybe they
Mm-hmm.
will. But that's what, yeah, I would agree with you. I think that's the right take on the Jets. So obviously we got to talk about the Patriots as well. But I guess right before we switch there, just if you're saying who's winning this division, we can talk about if how many teams from this division can make the playoffs at the end. But right now, out of those three, who are you most confident in? You said the Bills earlier. Is that what you said?
I'm most confident in the Bills, yes.
Okay. I think that's fair. I think I would agree. I don't know, but those secondary problems we talked about does give me a little pause. I don't know. I could see you guys doing it, but I guess it kind of comes down to two, honestly.
Yeah, no, I think this like AFC East, I think this is a division where three teams are very much in contention. I personally am most confident in the Bills because I think they have the most sustained success and they change the least amount. So I think like they're still the team to beat. And I think people are just forgetting that because they've just been good for so long. They kind of want someone else to come in.
Yeah.
But me personally, I'm very comfortable with putting like Bills at number one. And honestly, Dolphins or Jets at number two, you could flip them because I honestly think all three teams have a very good chance of making the playoffs this year.
I agree. I think playoff seeding gets a little weird. It depends on your
Mhm.
I think all three of those teams are at least 10 wins. I was looking at the schedules. We can get into that at the end. I mean, this division they're not playing the toughest road in terms of their opposition during the season. So I think all these teams can get there.
Mhm.
But before we touch on that, the New England Patriots, you never want to count them out. Even though last year, they weren't a playoff team, they still fought teams throughout the year. They still gave up good fights. And listen, bringing in former Penn State coach, former Houston Texans coach for a very long time, multiple playoff appearances, Bill O'Brien coming back to New England as the offensive coordinator. I think this is going to do wonders for this offense because are they going to be elite? No, they don't have the talent to be elite, but I think they're going to be a lot better. This was a mess of a team last year offensively. They still were competitive because it's a Bill Belichick coach team. But what's your take on just, I guess, this Patriots offense in general?
I think they're going to be better. They're going to be better organized than last year, but no one really moves me like outside of maybe Devontae Parker, but that's because I like Devontae
Oh,
Parker.
come on.
That's not because he's actually a number one wide receiver. I just like him
Fair.
because
I like Kendrick Bourne a lot too. I'm hoping he comes back.
like they have a lot of 2 and 3 receivers, and there's no clear number one wide receiver on this team. Like Juju, even on the Chiefs last year, like honestly, like Juju should have been better on the Chiefs last year, and he wasn't terrible. I don't want to like kind of like like diminish what he did, but I think for someone who had such like a good start to their career, Juju like has really like fallen off since then. Honestly, I don't think their like offense is going to be that great. I just think they're going to be a bit more organized, so they'll be a little better. But I don't think like in a general sense they can compete with the rest of the AFC East.
I think they're going to have to be smash mouth. They're going to have to rely on that offensive line, which is pretty solid. I think you look at this group across the board. I mean, Trent Brown's had his injury concerns, but I think he was pretty solid last year. Cole Stranger, after they overdrafted him, but he was pretty solid as a rookie. Hopefully he keeps getting better. So just across their O-line solid. My thing with them, so they let Damian Harris go, which I think was okay. I don't think he was happy with how they handled his play last year. And obviously, like we said, they're changing the offensive coordinator, but still, Ramondre's awesome. I think he's going to be really good. But so what they did to replace Harris was they signed James Robinson, but then he got cut after like 2 months. So now they only have Ramondre, who I think can handle those goal line carries. And I think he's going to be a really good, once again, fantasy football. I think he's going to be really good. I just traded for him in our league, obviously. From you, right? Didn't I trade him?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we just made that Ramondre Stevenson trade. I gave up 2 first-round picks for him. But Pierre Strong and Ty Montgomery, my beloved Ty Montgomery, these are not power backs. So I just think, I guess Ramondre can do it, but I just feel like he's going to get a lot of carries. And I guess it's going to be, is Belichick going to give him that? Is Belichick and Bill O'Brien going to give him those big touches, or are they going to still try to do this oh, we're gonna have a three-headed backfield. We're gonna have to use our depth. Well, in my opinion, they don't really have the depth there to play smash mouth football. So they're gonna need to give Ramondre Stevenson a big workload, and I think they will. But hey, we've seen the Patriots not do that before. So what do you think about Stevenson? I think he's the key to this for them.
I really like Stevenson, but kind of like you were saying, they don't really have the depth to be like keeping him super fresh. So I'm actually kind of concerned he might deal with some injuries this season because he already dealt with a few minor ones last season. I'm kind of concerned that they might try to use him too much because like I think Pierre Strong and like Kevin Harris, they were rookies last year. They have a chance to develop, and Montgomery does he has value as like a receiving third down back, but I don't think there's anyone to really like work in relief of Ramondre Stevenson, and I'm kind of concerned about like they might overuse him too much, and then you've lost one of your best offensive pieces.
Maybe this is a Kareem Hunt team or even a Zeke. So I mean, it's still early in the offseason. I think that could be something we see, but Dalvin Cook as well. I think Dalvin Cook is definitely the best of that group still available. So we'll see if he ever, I think he wants more money than he's getting offered right now. So I think that's a possibility, but we'll have to see. Is there anything else you want to touch on with this Patriots offense? I think what's the deal with Mike Gesicki? Dolphins kind of let him go and he only could get a 1-year contract. What do you expect out of him?
I think the problem with it is he's going to be behind Hunter Henry, and I think Hunter Henry is like solidly a much better just tight end in a general sense. The problem is that Mike Gesicki, he's really just a huge wide receiver, and he's not necessarily mobile enough after the catch to really do anything. So Mike Gesicki's kind of like in a weird position of like, is he just like a toss-up ball guy? Is he an athletic tight end? Is he an inline tight end? And it creates like a weird scenario with how you use him. And he also wanted to be paid receiver money, or at least that's what a lot of the reports came out. Obviously, I'm not like a beat writer with the team, so I don't know specifics, but it was like kind of well known that he was asking for a lot more money than like the teams felt he was worth, which is why he signed the 1-year deal with New England. But he's also going to be the second guy, so maybe that'll help him develop because he gets to sit and learn, or who knows, to be honest. But
yeah, and Belichick, he's kind of the guy who started this whole two receiving tight end thing with Gronk and Aaron Hernandez, and since then he's tried to replicate it. They kind of did it for a sec with Martellus Bennett, but I mean, recently they signed Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. Hunter Henry's been good. I think he's mostly met expectations. Jonnu, it didn't work. And I think they're trying to get what they wanted from Jonnu with Mike Gesicki here. I think it's possible. I think Mac Jones is smart and solid. And I think he's going to have a bounce back year. It's just the matter of fact is the guy does not have an elite arm and he does not have any sense of mobility despite being young. So they're going to need him to be pinpoint accurate. And it's kind of what he was as a rookie. It's why they made the playoffs. But I don't know. It's a lot of pressure on him as well. So I don't view this as a playoff team, but I think they're going to be better.
yeah, no, I agree. I think Bill O'Brien may not be like the best head coach, but I think he should be fine as like the offensive coordinator. And, like we were talking about, like they actually have an offensive coordinator this time around. Yeah. So that's probably going to be super helpful with at least the organizational standpoint, for like making sure everyone's in the right spots. Everyone knows they're what they're running and stuff like that. But yeah, I think the offense is just very lacking. It's just very average, below average at best. And, unfortunately, like that's just not going to get it done, which is why they're heavily relying on the defense. And I like the defense a little more, but I also have some reservations about their defense as well a little bit.
This is my thing. I was going to say this. On paper, I was like, oh yeah, Patriots defense is good. I don't know. Even a couple years ago when they made the playoffs 2 seasons ago, I don't know if they have like those classic Patriots defensive captains anymore outside of Matt Judon and Kyle Duggar. I just don't know there's a lot of solid hands. Bill Belichick loves his solid hands, but those guys were always at best when they were playing behind those top end talents that the Patriots developed. Now, maybe they're going to develop them again this season. We'll see some guys step up. I'm not sure, but I mean, Lawrence Guy's been there forever. I mean, Dietrich Wise is older than you think. Jawan Bentley, same thing. I don't know. I just don't know if this is really, I don't know who I don't know who the leaders of this defense are. Now, maybe it's some of these young guys. Christian Gonzalez fell to them in the draft. Maybe just right away as a rookie, he steps up. Marcus Jones, he's an electric kick returner. Maybe he can take a step as a corner. And then Jack Jones, who had a really good rookie season, but once again fell into a little bit of legal trouble recently. It doesn't seem like he's going to miss. It doesn't sound like he's getting suspended, but just you don't want to hear his name in the news for a negative reason again, but you did. So we'll have to see how that plays out.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't love what they're doing. They're banking a lot on development. And I think the way they're banking on development is a little different from like what the Jets or the Dolphins or the Bills are doing, because they still have those established guys. Maybe they're not the greatest, but they have someone established. But I just feel like the Patriots are kind of just relying on like an average guy as their starter and then hoping this like 6th-round rookie like really gets it together. And I don't really know how I feel about that. So, and especially like you're saying, I don't love their secondary outside of like Duggar and Christian Gonzalez, to be honest.
Yeah, Jonathan Jones in the slot. I mean, he's good, but I don't really ever recall. I don't know. Maybe this is disrespectful. He's been in New England for a long time, but I don't really ever recall being like, yeah, Jonathan Jones really, really changed the game. Like, he's solid, but like, I don't know. It just feels like a lot of guys who were there in the Brady era still are there, but like, it's kind of, so I don't know. I think these young talent, I think they have a lot of young talent, but can that young talent step up, I guess, is what we're going to see. I think they're going to frankly struggle. I mean, Christian Gonzalez, this is not the division you want to be as a rookie corner, a number one rookie corner. I mean, maybe if he had Gilmore or JC Jackson to play off of, sure. But as a number one rookie corner going against these receivers, it's going to be tough.
Oh yeah, especially because Jonathan Jones, like he's their slot guy. He's not even like a boundary corner. So if they're starting him at boundary corner, that's not a good look for the rest of that defense. And I love Christian Gonzalez. He's Colombian. Shout out to the Colombians out there. I'm Colombian. So I love him. But I think they're really like they're taking trial by fire a little too seriously and they're throwing him to the wolves. And I feel bad for him because I think people are like after this season, unless they can figure something out, people are going to be like, wow, he had a rough rookie season. I don't know if he's going to pan out. And I don't think that's fair to him because I think he has the capability to be a number one corner in this league.
Hopefully it works out for him though. So that's really all we need to say about the Patriots. So looking at just to finish up here, wrap up, standings watch. We talked about the Bills. I'm in agreement with you that the Bills are going to win this division. I think I had them 11-6 when I looked at the schedules. And then Dolphins and Jets, I think like we talked about, they're pretty interchangeable. I actually had them both at 10-7. Now I think it's very possible one of those teams, goes 9-8. Maybe I was trying to keep it an even split. Like, let's say the Bills win one, Dolphins win one, Jets win one, Dolphins win one. Like, I didn't want to have a sweep in there, but it's possible that if a sweep occurs in the division, that's where you'll see, oh, the Bills won 13 games or the Jets got to 11 wins. So that's kind of the variable. But the division these teams are playing, NFC East, which, what do you think about that? I think Eagles are obviously a big problem. Cowboys will compete, although I think all three of those teams can beat Dallas. But then like the Jets and Commanders, it's whatever. And then they are playing the AFC West, but I don't know if the AFC West is as good as we think it is. We'll have to see, especially with Denver. But I don't know. What do you think about those are the main teams these teams will be competing with? Does that sway your opinion on their records at all?
It's not going to sway my opinion because like you're always going to play like really good teams at some point in your season, regardless if it's the Eagles this year or the Chiefs next year. You should always be prepared for that, especially with playing with really good teams in your division. Like for the Dolphins, we're playing the Bills and the Jets. Those are two good teams. So it doesn't sway me. I would say comfortably Patriots in last and Bills in first. Yeah. And then for me, as I mentioned, I feel like the Jets and Dolphins are a huge toss-up because I really do think the top three teams have a very good chance of all making the playoffs. I'm going to say Dolphins because I'm a Dolphins fan. I'm going to put them at 2, and I believe in them. I think they have the capability to get it done, but I'm not trying to like diminish the Jets because I still think they will probably make the playoffs as well.
Yeah. I'm in lockstep with you. I think that's my prediction. I go Bills, I go Dolphins in a tiebreaker win over the Jets. I think I'll slot them down as both 10-win teams. And then the Jets third place. Can they make the playoffs with that record? It's very possible, but the AFC is a tough conference, so maybe not. We'll have to see. And then I think New England. What do you think New England win-wise? I feel like that's a 6-win team, maybe an 8-win team in the NFC, but in this conference, maybe 6.
Very, very middle of the road team. I'd say 6, 7, 8 wins is probably comfortably around where they'll be.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. So, all right, that's going to do it for our AFC East preview. It was a lot of fun talking about these teams, Mike. I'm excited for your Dolphins. I think they're going to have, I think it'll be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
Waddle and Hill, especially, of course.
Yeah, no, I'm really hopeful for this season. I'm really honestly probably the most hopeful and excited I've been for a Dolphin season. I think this is by far the best team we've had probably my whole lifetime at
Yeah,
this rate.
I was going to say, yeah.
Like since we lost Marino, I don't think any team has really moved the needle like I think this one can. So
Yeah, I'm excited. So, next time out, we're going to talk about the AFC North. But for now, thank you all for listening. Make sure to follow on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube. And other than that, thanks for listening. Catch you next time.